Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:07 now. It's O'Connor and Company on this Tuesday morning. Thanks for joining us. Coming up at 7:35, Mark Paoletta is going to talk about how Clarence Thomas seems to be omitted from Black History Month curricula. What's that all about? Coming up at 8:05, Tom Homan on the border. And then at 8:35, Governor Scott Walker on the current state of the presidential election. Also, Ronald Reagan's birthday today. Governor Walker there at Young America's Foundation. They're sort of the keeper of the Reagan flame at this point with the Reagan Ranch and the Reagan Childhood Home. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Jules.
Good morning.
So let's get right to it because we spent a lot of time last year talking about Sage's Law. Now, this was a law that, to sum it up quickly here before we bring in Laura Hanford, what it says is that teachers and administrators and counselors, government employees at public schools, can't keep secrets from parents about their own child. Now, if we had a law making its way through Richmond that said teachers can't keep secrets about a test score or a report card or grades in a class from parents, that would be a no-brainer. Well, of course teachers should share that information with parents. But these are secrets of a sexual nature, of, in many cases, a psychological nature that could show major trauma brewing with a child. And if a parent proactively calls a teacher and says, hey, I've noticed something weird with Susan, is there anything I should know about? If the teacher knows that Susan is actually regendering herself at school, that teacher will keep that secret from the parent.
That's right.
It's absolutely outrageous that we even have to debate this. And, of course, it's called Sage's Law because that secret was kept from parents in the case of Sage. Sage was then a victim of child trafficking, horrible sexual assaults, kidnapping, you name it. So that's the background. Let's bring Laura Hanford in here now because this didn't pass last session, and we had even more Republican votes than Laura Hanford. What's happening now as we're facing a final vote this Thursday?
Well, good morning, Larry and Julie. Your timing was perfect because I just got to Richmond. The hearing in the subcommittee in the House was supposed to be this afternoon at 4, and they shifted it at the last minute last night or yesterday afternoon to 7:30 this morning. So
they do that a lot, don't they? Because they don't want Laura Hanford to show up.
That's right.
Right. And so so we're here because this is Sage's Law Season 2, and we're going to be here until the finale. We'll be here next year if it takes until next year, because that's what parents do. We don't give up. So
now,
go ahead.
I'd be interested in are we seeing the same pushback as last time? Last time, Danica Rome got up and cried and carried on and said that this would lead to the harms of children and the outing of trans children. Are we seeing that same kind of energy this time?
That same kind of rhetoric, yes. So one difference is this time there's a sponsor in the House and in the Senate. So we had the Senate subcommittee vote last week, and we had all that kind of crazy rhetoric, and there's a trans genocide and trans apartheid and all this crazy rhetoric. And it was voted down because the members on that side said, well, this would break the bond of trust between the teacher and the student. And of course, the obvious responses to that is the baseline bond of trust here is not between the students and the teacher. It's wonderful when that's there, but the baseline bond is this lifelong trust that you're breaking if you drive a wedge between a parent and child by secrecy. So that was voted down. Their final vote will be this Thursday. That's in the Senate. And then the final vote, or the subcommittee hearing that I'm about to go into now with Michelle, it starts at 7:30. That subcommittee vote is final if they vote no. And I will tell you, it's stacked with like 6 Democrats to 3 Republicans. So, so it's going to look pretty grim. But it'll be interesting to see. The Democratic politicians are so far out over where their voters are. At some point, this is going to catch up to them, and I think we're seeing the tide start to turn. But whether they get that yet, I don't know.
Yeah.
But We'll have to see. So we'll say that we'll be there. Michelle.
There is some new information. There's some new info. First of all, I think the tide has already started to turn on this quite a bit, but it takes a long time to turn a giant aircraft carrier in the ocean. And that's what this thing is. It's been steaming ahead full steam, and now we're starting to turn it around. But since last year's vote, not only do you have public polls showing that they disagree with teachers and schools intervening and keeping these secrets, these transition secrets from parents, polls are on our side, but also we just had a New York Times article this weekend talking about the dangers of these things. And we also have a lawsuit in New York, I'm sure you're aware of it, Laura, where parents are suing a New York school district for socially transitioning their daughter without the mother's consent. And this is a mother who, as I just represented, called on a regular basis, knowing that their daughter was going through a lot of things. They had to move internationally. Their daughter was having some issues in terms of socialization, in terms of adapting to the new school district. And all that time, they kept it secret from their 12-year-old daughter that they were transitioning her behind her back, as they did with several other girls at that school. And now that school district is being sued. Forget about compassion for the children and compassion for the parents, because they don't care. But will Democrats at least care about the fact that they could get their butt sued off if they walk down this path?
Well, let's hope. Michelle has a lawsuit against Appomattox and against the public defender that was so terrible in her case. So there are actually upwards of 20 lawsuits around the country that have to do with this sort of thing. So you would think at some point they're going to wake up and say, we cry about the funding all the time. Let's not use any of that precious funding on expensive lawsuits that are completely unnecessary, because we shouldn't be lying to parents in the first place.
Yeah. Go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm curious if you have seen, we talked about how the Democrats use all of these lies about harms to children and suicide. Do you think in the year, since Sage's Law was defeated last year, do you think in that year, have you seen more people sort of realize that these are lies? Do you feel, you mentioned the polling, but, when we saw this happen with Governor Mike DeWine, a Republican, right, who was really convinced by this. And do you think people are finding the courage to stand up against these activists who use these very emotional appeals to people to keep these barriers between parents and children?
I think so, more and more. I mean, there was a therapist yesterday, a new whistleblower from Seattle, Washington.
Yes. On
the same, I think we're just going to be seeing more and more of this because more and more people are being harmed. And the medical studies are showing, sadly, the kids who have been committing suicide have been on these protocols.
Yes.
So this is not, and that's going to get out, but a lot of people, there's still a baseline of knowledge that needs to shift, but we're definitely shifting.
The Democrats are playing dirty on this one in Richmond. They had set the hearing today for 4 p.m. At the last minute yesterday, early evening, late afternoon, they changed it to 7:30 this morning, knowing that it was going to disrupt people's lives who were going to testify and have their voices heard. It ain't going to get in the way of Laura Hanford. She just arrived in Richmond. She'll be heard in just about 15 minutes. You need to be heard too. Go to sageslaw.org. You can copy, paste, and send emails right from there. Get all your friends to do it as well. Recommend it on your social media pages. sageslaw.org. Let's change the world here, one child at a time, starting right here in Virginia. Laura, thank you so much for your advocacy on this issue. There's a special place in heaven for you. I appreciate it.
Thank you both so much. It's a team effort.
7:15 WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives. Here is Jamie Whitten in the Hadid.
More than just politics, because laughter is the best medicine. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
So today's the day that the District Council will vote on what they're calling the Secure DC Crime Bill, and I find the name of it rather ironic, considering they're admitting in the name that the District of Columbia, the federal capital of the United States of America, is not a secure place to be. It's not a secure place to live. It's not a secure place to work. It's not a secure place to have a business. It's not a secure place to visit. It's not a secure place to drive a car if you're stopped at a red light and you can get attacked and murdered. So it's taken months for them to come up with this brand new Secure DC crime bill. We still don't know all of the details in it. They're calling it the Secure DC Omnibus Amendment Act of 2024. Brooke Pinto proposed it. We hear great things about her and her approach here. It's a 180 turn from where they were a year ago with their crime bill that even Joe Biden agreed shouldn't move forward, and it was rejected by the House and the Senate. As Pinto said in social media this week, residents deserve to be safe and secure across the district. On Tuesday, the council will vote on my Secure DC bill that will improve safety by increasing prevention, accountability, and government coordination. But as we saw at the town hall last week, ultimately, if the U.S. attorney refuses to prosecute and actually keep bad people behind bars, if the Attorney General refuses to participate in law and order, and I want to reiterate, as long as the Metropolitan Police Department has over 500 vacancies
Good God.
to police this town, even this bill isn't going to make a difference. It may toughen up laws with regard to carjacking. That's the one thing you keep hearing from Phil Mendelson and other proponents of this as well. It redefines the carjacking so the police can do more to do that. They didn't need a freaking 12-month omnibus amendment agreement. They could have done that one line to the criminal code. Redefine carjacking to mean this, and then the police can do their jobs. That wasn't their priority. They threw that in there while they've got all this other stuff.
Where have we seen that pattern before, Larry, with Biden?
This is what they do.
This is the strategy. But, a friend of mine, Bruce, Bruce, he tweeted the other day. He said, "I'm so excited. This morning I realized I can do all my errands within walking distance. I don't have to take my car out." Because for him, he lives in Washington, and for him it is a constant fear of his that if he takes his car out, he'll get carjacked. I mean, that is the mentality of the people in Washington, D.C. It's terrible.
I love this, some of the other language in here. One of my favorites is this. It's going to allow D.C. police to create drug-free zones for up to 5 days. Now, for 5 days, only 5 days, right?
Yeah, then you're free to go.
Think this through for a minute. Up until about 7 years ago, all of Washington, D.C. was a drug-free zone because it was criminalized. And the very same politicians that proposed, championed, advocated for, and celebrated the legalization of certain drugs here in D.C. are now patting themselves on the back because they're allowing the police to declare a drug-free zone for up to 5 days.
Well, let's not forget.
I got an idea. How about we just criminalize drugs again?
Yeah, let's talk also about Democrats who are all excited about legalizing every single drug, but they can't stand it if you vape or smoke a menthol cigarette.
Oh,
okay,
please.
so
yeah,
exactly. I mean,
you're straight to jail for you.
Right.
Also, get this one. This is going to be the game changer. This new amendment to the crime bill will make it an offense, a crime, to fire a gun in public. I'm not joking. They're finally going to get to it.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it.
So think this through for a minute. Not that I'm advocating for people to fire guns in public
No,
unless
of
it's
course.
for self-defense. But currently, if somebody gets murdered via a firearm, via a gun, the person who is raising that gun and pulling the trigger to take a person's life is fully aware that there is a law against murder. And they're going to go ahead and pull that trigger anyway and kill somebody. But now we're supposed to believe that because they've made it a law to fire a gun in public, that murderer is going to stop themselves and say, wait a minute, I shouldn't kill this person because it's against the law to pull the trigger.
But what if you kill someone in private? I mean, off the hook.
Right. All murders will now take place in a private place.
In the privacy of your own home.
Thank you, District of Columbia. That bit, we're mocking it because they deserve to be mocked, but at the same time, it appears that this is at least a modicum of a step forward. A baby step, but it is a step. It's 7:20.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:37 now, this busy Tuesday morning. Thanks for joining us on O'Connor and Company. Coming up, there's more to come. 8:05, we're going to speak with Tom Homan on the border. And then at 8:35, Governor Scott Walker I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Julie, it's Black History Month.
Good to know.
That means your children are going to be inundated with various special projects and curricula and things like that. I do love the viral video that's been going around showing Morgan Freeman. He was asked by Mike Wallace about Black History Month. Does it make you happy that we've got a Black... He said, no, because it suggests that Black history is different than American history.
That's right.
Every day should be American History Day, and of course Black history is part of that. That said, if we're going to have a Black History Month, which clearly we do, and various corporations are embracing it, various celebrations in municipalities and states across the country, and certainly curricula in our school system, we should probably focus on some great American heroes like Clarence Thomas. And
Makes
yet,
sense.
He's barely mentioned. Mark Paoletta, Senior Fellow at Center for Renewing America and also co-editor of the book Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in His Own Words. He worked on the Thomas confirmation. You participated in the film of your book, too, Created Equal, which is phenomenal. People should see it on Amazon. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Julie, thanks for having me on. Good morning.
So you wrote about this at thefederalist.com, that every Black History Month celebration should honor Clarence Thomas, yet they don't. And it's so deliberate and it's so obvious. Do they even try at this point to rationalize this with any sort of logic, or is it just, well, he's not the right kind of black man?
Larry, that's exactly it. Justice Thomas is our greatest Black American. He's our greatest American, our greatest justice, our greatest living American. And in this month in particular, he should be celebrated. And, just as an example of just how the left and what I call the leftist Black leadership want to shut him out because he doesn't think the way they believe a black man should think, right? How racist is that you have to think a certain way based on the color of your skin?
Yeah, that's the definition of racist.
And I think a perfect example of that is back in 2016, I went into the African American Museum, which had just opened up in D.C. And guess what? There was nothing on Justice Clarence Thomas in that museum. And what did they have? They had a couple items on Anita Hill, right? Yeah. And I thought that was the most offensive thing. And for 1 year, right? There you go. I can't remember the name, Lonnie Bunch, who is now, I think, the head of the Smithsonian now, but he was the head of that museum at the time. He said, you know what? There's lots of people to cover. We'll get to it. We do rotating things. That was their answer to why they didn't have Justice Thomas in their museum on the first day it opened. So I would encourage your listeners, and Larry, you just mentioned it, Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in His Own Words. I just was out at a college screening it this month, last night actually, for this month. And it's amazing how the students, don't know. And most Americans really don't know about Justice Thomas's amazing life, how he was born in segregation in 1948 in the Deep South, right, to a family, right, a mom who had 3 children, or, he was the middle of 3. Father abandoned the family when Clarence was 2. Abject poverty, no education. And from there, right, he goes to live with his grandparents when he's 7 years old. And it's the community, his family, where he rises and gets lifted out of those difficult circumstances, and what ends up on the Supreme Court. And not just ends up on the Supreme Court, he is the greatest justice on the Supreme Court, the intellectual leader of the Supreme Court. It's the Thomas Court. And when you see the court today, and all of their great opinions, right, from on abortion, on affirmative action, religious liberties, reigning in the administrative state, those are all cases and opinions that Thomas laid the groundwork for over the past 30 years. He's been on the court for 33 years, and I think he's the 11th longest serving justice in our history. And in about 4 years, he'll be the longest. So just, quantity in terms of time served, but also quality in terms of his opinions and how he's moved American jurisprudence back to what we call originalism and being faithful to the Constitution.
Yep.
He really is incredible, but they are really out to get him. He has faced so many assaults on his character, on his decisions to sell property that are completely legitimate, on nearly everything. They've even attacked his wife, Ginny, who is an accomplished Washington, D.C. sort of consultant and journalist. And I always find it fascinating that they attack her for having her own career and her own opinions, and yet don't really focus on the spouses of other Supreme Court justices that also have their own careers and own opinions on things. They really have tried to take him down, and they attack even his family. Mark, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, Julie, I'm glad you brought that up, because right now they're doing it again. They've always been after Ginny Thomas because she's a strong conservative woman who actually has her own career in life. But they're trying to force Justice Thomas to recuse from this case that's coming up on Thursday and from all Trump-related cases. And so that I think there's a story in the Washington Post this morning, I think an ABC story, about how Justice Thomas must recuse. It's absolutely baseless. There is no basis for Justice Thomas to have to recuse. His wife's allowed to have her own views and her own work. But the most dishonest thing in these articles and the way they cover it is this has already been sort of laid out in other opinions, and the left defending other judges who have not recused. Justice Ginsburg trashed President Trump during 2016 in the presidential campaign for not releasing his taxes, and then she sat on the case on Trump's taxes in 2020. Nobody said she should recuse, right? There was a case, and there was a Ninth Circuit case. A judge had a wife who was the head of the ACLU. It was on the same-sex ban in California, constitutional amendment to the California Constitution, and his wife joined a brief, her organization, the ACLU, in the court below, saying that ban was unconstitutional. That went up to this judge, and he sat on the case. And the left, Stephen Gillers, who's a noted ethics professor, said there's no reason for him to recuse. So when you have examples like that, and that's perfectly fine, Ginny Thomas can express her opinions on things. She's not involved with this case at all. This is the Trump v. Anderson case on Thursday. She's not involved at all.
Of course.
And it's just it's the left trying to shrink the court so that they have their preferred justices deciding the cases. They're trying to get Justice
100%.
Thomas or other conservative justices off the cases.
And by the way, typical of the left, this in its own way is a racist trope as well. That the black man on the Supreme Court can't think and judge for himself. He will do whatever the white woman he's married to tells him to do. They can't say anything about Clarence Thomas without revealing their inherent racism. The good news about all of this, the fact that they disrespect him in Black History Month and curriculum and all these things, is that honestly, he is so at peace with who he is and how he will meet his maker that he doesn't care. He doesn't care. I care more about this than I think Clarence Thomas does. Parents, give your children a real education. Have them watch the documentary. In his own words, the Clarence Thomas story. It is fantastic. It is brilliant. You'll learn so much about Created Equal. Clarence Thomas, in his own words, is the name of the documentary. And you'll also learn a little bit about Joe Biden, who, everything I ever needed to know about Joe Biden before he became vice president or president, I learned in the Justice Bork and Justice Thomas confirmation hearings. That is who Joe Biden is, and you will never take that. You'll never lessen that impact that it had on me when I was growing up. Whatever you tell me about Joe Biden, he will never be anyone but the man who oversaw those travesties. Mark, thank you for carrying the torch here for the Thomas family. You're a real friend of them, and you're a great champion of the truth. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Julie.
All right, we got some presidential politics news for you. First of all, you might see headlines today about the Nevada primary. I'm just letting you know it's literally meaningless. It has nothing to do with the Republican Party in Nevada. It's a very weird thing. The state's having a primary process. The GOP decided that they wanted to have a caucus process. That's happening on Thursday. And, in fact, the rules are if you participate in the primary on Tuesday, you are ineligible to have any delegates on the Thursday caucus. It's weird. And because of that and because of confusion, it's sort of rendering the Nevada caucus process sort of not super relevant. Nikki Haley has decided to participate in the primary. so she will not be eligible in the caucus. It looks like Trump will get all of the delegates. They also had another rule in Nevada, Julie, that precluded you from using a super PAC for any campaigning. They wanted this to just be campaigns versus campaigns. Whether you like it or not, that's the rules the GOP in Nevada decided to set up. That would have really hampered Ron DeSantis because he used his Never Back Down super PAC for so much. So it looks like whatever happens today, literally, whoever wins the primary in Nevada today, it means nothing. So if you're seeing people tell you that it means something, just so you know, what matters in Nevada is what happens on Thursday. Also on Thursday is the caucus for the Republican Party of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Mm-hmm. Both Haley and Trump are trying to win those delegates. It's a winner-take-all. I'm actually in St. Thomas now covering that, and I'm participating with some events for the Republican Party down here as well, because there's a lot of former D.C. people who live down here now, and it's
Nice.
Understandable why. So I'll be able to give you some firsthand reports from the scene here at St. Thomas. Nikki Haley actually did a virtual meeting yesterday with a lot of people from the Virgin Islands via
She
Zoom.
raised an interesting thing. You should say.
Yeah, she said, listen, I think the next president is going to be a woman, whether it's me or it's Kamala Harris. And basically said, but Joe ain't going to make it. And
That's
so who's your best person to, give an alternative to Kamala Harris, which I don't know if that's an effective argument for her, but it's an interesting one. And she spent a lot of time going after going after Kamala Harris, and also going after Trump for what she believes is his age and cognitive issues, which I think is kind of an undermining tactic for somebody who could very well be the nominee of the party. It's sort of,
Yeah. Trump makes one mistake calling Pelosi Nikki Haley, which frankly, it could be argued
somewhat
that he did it on
understandable.
purpose.
Also, but meanwhile, Donald Trump is sort of focusing on the general election already for the most part, and many people are speculating on a running mate. Kellyanne Conway, who is I think, respected advisor to President Trump, whether she's on the payroll or not, says that it should be a person of color. She wrote a New York Times op-ed saying that really don't play into identity politics by picking a woman. No, instead, pick a man like Tim Scott or Marco Rubio or Byron Donalds, who, by the way, Byron Donalds and Wesley Hunt, both black congressmen, Republicans pro-Trump, they were in the Virgin Islands. He's using them to stump for them in across the country for the nomination. Just as an aside, she thinks, that would be the way to go. In fact, I saw people floating last week that Trump is considering Ben Carson as a running mate.
Good man, such a good man.
He is a good man. Those are all good and interesting choices.
Yeah.
I don't know if Marco Rubio brings much to the table, given the fact that he's also from Florida.
Besides his little hands.
It's so funny that everybody decided that it was Marco Rubio. Go back and watch the tape. Marco Rubio was making fun of the size of Trump's hands.
Is that right?
Yes, but it's become this folklore that little Marco is the one who had the little hands.
That's funny.
It's actually fascinating how that happened. Go back. It was the debate. I remember it was the Nevada debate on the day of CPAC, actually, that happened. And all hell broke loose. It's